I remember the sound the most. The hollow clink of the metal as it hit the counter. A sound so small, so insignificant, and yet it split my life clean in two. I had trusted her with everything. My time, my heart, my future, and most of all with a ring. Not just any ring. A ring worth more than everything I owned. A ring my grandfather gave to my father, and my father passed down to me. A ring that wasn't just $2 million in value. It was a piece of legacy. She sold it for $500. $500. The day I found out was an ordinary Tuesday. Sunlight spilled through the blinds. I was sitting at my desk, drinking coffee that tasted like routine. Then came a call. "Is this Mr. Hale?" "Yes. This is Baxter and Cole, jewelry authentication. We just wanted to verify the appraisal on your ring, the one listed under your family estate." My blood ran cold. "What about it?" The man hesitated. "It was brought in yesterday by a pawn shop. A woman sold it. We traced the serial number engraved inside. It's your ring, sir." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. That's impossible. But it wasn't, because only two people had access to that safe. Me and her. I drove home with my hands gripping the wheel so tightly I could feel my heartbeat in my knuckles. The city blurred around me. Every red light felt like it was mocking me, whispering she did it. When I finally opened the front door, she was sitting on the couch like nothing had happened. Hair tied up in a loose bun, scrolling through her phone. "Where's the ring?" My voice was flat, too calm. She froze. Just for a second. But that's all I needed to see. "Why are you asking me that?" she said lightly. But her hand trembled just enough to betray her. "Where is the ring?" She set the phone down slowly, like someone trying to buy time. I needed money. Just for a little while. I was going to fix it. Fix it. My voice cracked, a quiet, dangerous sound. "You sold a $2 million ring for $500, and you were going to fix it?" Her eyes widened. She hadn't expected me to know the price. She hadn't expected to be caught this fast. How do you know that?" she whispered. "Because it's already been flagged," I said. "Because you didn't just sell a ring. You sold something that was never yours to sell." She tried to spin it. "They always do." She talked about desperation, about needing money for an emergency, about how she didn't understand what it was worth. But that was a lie. She knew. She'd seen me hold that ring in my hand 100 times. She'd heard me talk about what it meant to me, to my family, to everything I believed in. She'd even asked me once, half joking, what it was worth. I told her. She laughed like it was a fairy tale. $2 million. And she'd sold it like it was scrap metal. I stared at her while she kept talking, her voice getting smaller and smaller. My heart wasn't racing anymore. That was the terrifying part. It was steady. "Cole, where did you sell it?" I asked. She bit her lip. "A pawn shop. There's a place downtown. But I can get it back. I swear I can fix this." I grabbed my keys. She reached out to touch me, but I stepped back like her fingers were fire. "I'm going to get my ring," I said quietly. "But make no mistake, this isn't something you can fix." The pawn shop smelled like old metal and desperation. The man behind the counter was short, balding, with hands stained from years of polishing junk people once swore was priceless. "I'm here for a ring," I said, sliding the paperwork across the counter. "This one." His eyes scanned the serial number, then flicked up to me. Recognition flashed. "Yeah, that came in yesterday. Lady said it was her grandma's. We gave her $500 cash. Didn't think it was real." "It's real," I said. His eyes widened slightly. He knew what that meant now. He swallowed. "Well, good news is we still have it. Bad news is I already sent it for evaluation. But I can pull it back. For a price." I leaned in slowly. "It's not for sale. It's mine." He raised his hands, backing off. "Hey, I don't want trouble. You can have it. I just need to file some papers, call the courier." The ring arrived in a small velvet pouch. And when he opened it, the world around me narrowed down to that single piece of metal. My father's voice echoed in my head. "This isn't just gold, son. This is your bloodline." I took the ring, held in my palm. My hand shook, not from anger, but from the sheer violence of the betrayal. When I got home, she was pacing in the living room, hands twisting nervously. She ran to me when I walked in. "Did you get it?" I didn't answer. I just placed the pouch on the table between us. Her eyes flicked to it, then back to me. "See? It's okay. It's fine now. I told you I'd fix it. I laughed. Not loud. Not cruel. Just broken. You didn't fix anything, I said. You burned something that can't be rebuilt. She froze. I trusted you, I whispered. More than anyone. And you sold the one thing I swore I'd protect for the rest of my life. And for what? $500. Tears pooled in her eyes, but I'd already stepped past the point of caring. I saw everything now. Not the woman I thought she was, but the one she'd been hiding behind soft smiles and sweet words. And I knew something with absolute clarity. The ring wasn't the only thing she'd sold. She'd sold my trust, and there was no buying that back. That night, as I sat alone with the ring in my hand, I realized something else. This wasn't just betrayal. It was a revelation. I had loved her like family. I had believed she would protect what mattered to me. Instead, she had been waiting for her moment to cash out. But she didn't just underestimate the value of the ring. She underestimated me. And that was her biggest mistake. The hours after that night stretched long and heavy, like time itself was holding its breath. I sat in silence, turning the ring slowly between my fingers. Every groove in the metal, every scratch on its surface carried years of history. Generations of it. It wasn't just expensive. It was sacred, and she had thrown it away for the cost of cheap dinner. I stared at the ceiling and asked myself the same question over and over. Why? Why someone I trusted so blindly could do something so cold? But betrayal never comes with clean answers. It doesn't arrive wrapped in logic. It arrives wrapped in choice. And she had made hers. The next morning, she tried to pretend it was just a fight. She brewed coffee, wore my hoodie, moved around the kitchen like we were still okay. Like all she needed to do was smile, and I'd forget the sound of the pawn shop clerk saying, that lady didn't know what she had. I watched her every movement, not out of love anymore, out of clarity. It was strange how familiar gestures could suddenly feel foreign. Can we talk? She asked softly. Talk, I said flatly. She took a deep breath, rehearsing the lines she probably stayed up all night building. I made a mistake. I panicked. I didn't know what else to do. You knew what it was worth, I said quietly. Her eyes flickered. That hesitation was enough. You knew exactly what you were doing. You looked me in the eye while wearing that ring 2 nights ago. You kissed me knowing it was already gone. She started crying. It used to break me when she cried. This time, it felt like a performance I'd seen before. I thought I could fix it, she whispered, the tears running down her cheeks. I didn't mean to hurt you. I leaned forward slowly, my voice barely more than a breath. You didn't just hurt me. You broke something that doesn't grow back. The days that followed weren't dramatic. They were quiet, cold, the way something rots slowly beneath a polished surface. She tried to be normal. She cooked. She laughed at shows. She touched me like she was trying to remind me of what we were. But what we were was gone. And every time I glanced at the ring, now locked inside a safe only I could access, I felt it more. The distance, the fracture, the truth. I couldn't unsee it anymore. One night, I came home later than usual. She was sitting on the couch in the dark, knees pulled to her chest, staring at the front door like a lost child. When I turned the light on, she blinked against it like someone caught stealing. Where were you? She asked. Working, I replied flatly. She bit her lip. You don't even talk to me anymore. Because there's nothing left to say, I said. She shot up from the couch. Yes, there is. We can fix this. You're acting like I killed someone. I took a step closer, and the air between us grew colder. No, you just sold my father's legacy for $500. I'm not sure which is worse. Her breath caught. Her face crumpled, but I didn't step forward to hold her. Not this time. The thing about betrayal is that it changes the sound of someone's voice, the way you see them, the weight of their presence. Even their laughter starts sounding like a stranger's. I started sleeping in the guest room. She didn't ask why. She already knew. And yet, she stayed. Not out of love, out of fear. She could feel me slipping away. She could feel the ground under her cracking. 2 weeks after the pawn shop incident, I received a call that twisted everything further. This is Detective Ramirez from the Metropolitan Police Department. Do you have a moment to talk about a reported theft? Theft. Apparently, the pawn shop owner, trying to cover himself after realizing the value of what he almost lost, filed a report. The moment he authenticated the ring's worth, it became a legal nightmare. I explained everything. How it was mine, how she had sold it without consent. The detective asked if I wanted to press charges. Press charges. The words hung in the air like a blade. That night, I sat in the dark, the phone heavy in my hand. I could ruin her life with one sentence. Jail time. A record. Everything. But betrayal doesn't always need punishment. Sometimes, the real justice is watching someone live with the consequences of the bridges they burned. I didn't press charges, but something inside me hardened for good. The next morning, I told her to sit down. No soft tone, no emotion, just finality. This doesn't work anymore, I said simply. She froze. What? I'm done. Tears welled up instantly. You can't just throw away everything we had because of one mistake. I let out a breath. One mistake? You didn't lose my toothbrush. You didn't scratch my car. You didn't forget an anniversary. You sold something worth $2 million. You sold a piece of my family's history. And worst of all, you hid it. She shook her head violently, stepping closer, but I stepped back. No, you don't get to touch me anymore. She gasped, like my words had landed harder than a slap. You want forgiveness, I said, but I can't forgive what you did. Because forgiveness doesn't bring back trust. And trust is dead. That was the last night she spent in that house. I didn't yell. I didn't throw things. I didn't even cry. I simply handed her a box for her things and walked away as she packed in silence. When she reached the door, she turned to me, tears streaking down her cheeks. I love you, she whispered. I didn't respond, because love without loyalty is nothing but noise. After she left, the silence in the house didn't feel empty. It felt clean, like a storm had passed, and the air was finally breathable again. I opened the safe, took the ring out, and stared at it for a long time. The gold gleamed under the light, untouched by her hands now. It wasn't just a ring. It was proof that I'd trusted the wrong person, and I promised myself never again. The weeks that followed felt like walking through smoke after a house fire. The structure was still standing, but everything inside had burned. I wasn't grieving her, not in the way people expect. I was grieving who I thought she was. The lies were so cleanly woven into her smile that I hadn't seen them unraveling beneath my feet. I'd loved a version of her that never truly existed. And once that realization set in, the hurt began to shift, not softer, not weaker, just colder. I spent my nights working late, drowning in the rhythm of numbers and contracts. Work doesn't ask questions. Work doesn't lie. But even in the quiet hours, I couldn't stop replaying that sound. The hollow clink of the ring hitting the pawn shop counter. $500. She'd sold my trust for less than the cost of a cheap vacation. One night, I sat at the kitchen table with a whiskey in hand and the ring lying on the polished wood in front of me. Its gold reflected the overhead light like it held its own quiet fury. My father's voice echoed faintly in my head. Protect this with everything you are, son. Not because of what it's worth, but because of what it means. I'd failed him. Not because the ring was gone, I'd gotten it back, but because I let the wrong person close enough to ever put it at risk. That truth didn't break me. It rebuilt me. A month later, she called. I stared at the screen, watching her name light up my phone. I didn't answer. She called again and again. On the fifth try, I finally picked up, not because I wanted to hear her voice, but because I needed to hear the sound of her regret. Please, she whispered, voice trembling. Please just let me explain. You already did, I said coldly. I didn't do it to hurt you. I swear. I made a mistake. I thought I could handle it. Handle what? I asked. Stealing from me? Her breath caught. I didn't steal. I borrowed it. I thought. You sold it. I cut in sharply. For $500. That's not borrowing. That's betrayal. She was quiet. I could hear her breathing hard on the other end, searching for something to say that could rewrite the past. Do you ever think, I said slowly, about the fact that you didn't just betray me? You priced me? You put a number on what I meant to you, and it wasn't even close to what I gave you. She started to cry then, hard, and for the first time, her crying didn't pull at me. It sounded like a storm happening miles away, loud but irrelevant. I hung up. After that, I started noticing things I had ignored before. The way she always dodged questions about money. How she had this habit of making her problems my responsibility. The way she smiled when I wasn't looking, like someone always calculating. The ring had just been the moment I finally saw her. And once you see the truth, you can't unsee it. A few weeks later, I was invited to a private investment dinner at one of the most exclusive restaurants in the city. It was the kind of table where deals are born and futures are written quietly over expensive wine. I put on my best suit and arrived early. I didn't think about her on the way there. Not once. That alone felt like victory. But fate, or something cruelly poetic, had other plans. She was there, not as a guest, as someone's plus one. She looked different, not the woman who used to stand next to me. Smaller somehow, nervous in a room that didn't belong to her. Her eyes widened when she saw me. She froze for half a second, then forced a shaky smile. I didn't return it. The dinner went on. I spoke with people who mattered, not once letting my gaze linger on her. But I felt hers, burning, searching. Halfway through, during the break between courses, she finally approached me. "Can we talk?" she whispered. I turned slowly, glass in hand. There's nothing left to say. Her throat bobbed as she swallowed. "I know I messed everything up. I know I ruined it. But I think about you every single day. About that night. About the ring. About everything." I tilted my head slightly. "You think guilt is love?" Her lips trembled. "It's not," I continued softly. "It's just guilt. And that's yours to keep." She started to cry again, quietly this time, no theatrics. The kind of crying that comes when someone finally understands the gravity of what they've done. But I didn't reach for her. I didn't soften. Because forgiveness isn't owed. And trust, once sold, never comes back. "You didn't just hurt me," I said quietly. "You reminded me what I should have never forgotten. Legacy doesn't belong in weak hands." Her face crumpled as she whispered, "I wish I could take it back." "You can't," I said simply. And I walked away. The next morning, I opened the safe again. The ring sat there, gleaming softly like it was waiting for me. I slipped it onto my finger for the first time in years. It felt heavy, not because of its weight, because of everything it represented now. I had spent too long letting someone else's weakness define my heartbreak. Now it would define my rise. I called my lawyer that afternoon. It wasn't about revenge. It was about protecting what was mine permanently. Legal protections, locks, transfers, restructuring. I rebuilt my world with steel walls. She would never have access to anything I loved again. 2 months later, I was standing in front of a boardroom full of investors, holding that ring in my palm as I told the story of what happened. Not as a tragedy, as a lesson. "You'll meet people," I said, my voice steady, "who smile at you while quietly calculating what they can take. Protect your legacy. Not because you don't love, but because not everyone loves like you do." The room was silent. And for the first time, I didn't feel like a man who had been betrayed. I felt like a man who had learned. The moment I walked away from her at that dinner was the exact moment the balance shifted forever. I felt it in my chest, quiet and final. She had spent months pretending she still had a place in my world. And in that single night, I made it clear she didn't. But endings don't always announce themselves. Sometimes they happen in silence, over a glass of wine, with one person realizing they no longer have power, and the other finally realizing they don't need closure. Over the next few weeks, her presence in my life became background noise. The calls grew fewer. The messages slowed. And then they just stopped. She finally understood. I had been her safety net, not just emotionally, but financially. The kind of person she thought she could always come back to. But once that door closed, it wasn't just a door anymore. It was a wall. And on the other side of that wall, I built everything she thought I couldn't. The business deal I had been working on for months finally closed. It wasn't just a contract. It was a statement. I had transformed what once was a quiet inheritance into a legacy 10 times bigger than what I inherited. Every step I took felt deliberate now. No more looking back. No more wasting energy on people who had already shown me their price tag. But then came a call I didn't expect. "Mr. Hale, we need to discuss the legal matter involving the pawn shop transaction," the lawyer said. I frowned. "What about it?" "Well, since the ring was sold fraudulently, and considering its appraised value, the DA wants to pursue it further. It's technically grand theft. The words echoed in my head. Grand theft. I hadn't wanted to drag her through the legal fire. But the world has a way of cashing in debts whether we want it to or not. When the official notice arrived, I stared at it for a long time. It felt strange seeing her name in black ink next to the words criminal investigation. The girl who used to sleep beside me. The woman I once thought I'd marry. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like reality catching up. She showed up at my office a few days later. Not like the woman who used to wear silk dresses and laugh like everything belonged to her. No, she looked smaller, humbled. Her hand shook as she held the envelope I knew she'd received. "They're going to charge me," she whispered, her voice cracking. I didn't get up from my chair. "Yes. I didn't mean for it to go this far," she said, clutching the edge of my desk. "I didn't mean to. You meant to sell it." I cut her off calmly. "Everything after that is just consequence." Tears pooled in her eyes. "You can stop this." I exhaled slowly, leaning back. "I could have. Months ago, when I still cared. But I don't anymore." She flinched as if the words themselves had weight. And they did. "You want me to save you?" I said quietly. "But you didn't think about saving me when you put that ring on a pawn shop counter." She covered her mouth, a sob catching in her throat. "Choices have price tags," I continued. "You just never expected to actually pay yours." The DA eventually offered her a deal. No prison time, just restitution and probation. I didn't push for blood. I didn't want revenge. I wanted her to live in the shadow of her own actions. She paid for the legal fees. She paid for the restitution. And she paid, most of all, in silence, the kind that follows when the last bridge turns to ash. Around that same time, I started wearing the ring again. Not out of sentimentality, out of ownership. It wasn't something to hide anymore. It wasn't a wound. It was a warning, a reminder of the line between trust and illusion. People at events noticed it. "Beautiful ring," they'd say. "Must be worth a fortune." I'd smile slightly. "More than you think." It wasn't just gold. It was everything I'd built from the fire she tried to start. Months later, our paths crossed one last time. It wasn't planned. It wasn't emotional. It just happened. I was leaving a meeting at a hotel downtown. She was outside, waiting tables at the cafe across the street. When she saw me, her eyes widened. She wasn't the same woman I'd loved. Life had stripped away the gloss, the confidence, the practiced charm. All that was left was someone standing in the ruins of her own choices. She approached slowly, her hands tucked in her apron like she was holding herself together. "You look good," she said softly. I didn't return the compliment. "Are you happy?" she asked, a hint of something fragile in her voice. "I am," I answered honestly. She nodded slowly. "I guess that's what you always deserved." For the first time, there was no manipulation behind her eyes. Just regret, real and raw. She asked, "Do you ever think about what we were?" I looked at her for a long moment, then said no. "I think about who I became because of it." Her lip trembled, but she didn't cry this time. She just nodded. "I hope one day I can rebuild the way you did." I slipped my hands into my pockets, the weight of the ring pressing against my finger. "You will," I said simply, "if you stop blaming the world for the fire you started." As I walked away, I realized something powerful. The worst betrayal doesn't come from strangers. It comes from people who knew exactly what they were holding and still chose to break it. But even more powerful than betrayal is what comes after the rise. The quiet, unstoppable rise of someone who no longer lets pain dictate their story. She sold my ring for $500. But what she really did was sell her place in a story worth far more than $2 million. Regret has a sound. It isn't loud like shouting or crashing. It's soft. It's the sound of footsteps walking away, of doors closing gently, of silence that lingers too long. That's what followed her after that day in front of the cafe. A silence that didn't ask for forgiveness. It just existed. For me, the silence was different. It wasn't empty anymore. It was clean, sharp, peaceful. For the first time in months, I wasn't looking back. I wasn't replaying conversations, imagining what could have been fixed. There was nothing to fix. The betrayal had already written its ending, and I was finally living in the after. My world grew louder in other ways. My business expanded faster than I could have imagined. New investors, new projects, late nights that didn't feel heavy anymore. Every meeting, every deal, every success. It was like I was reclaiming something that she'd tried to stain. She had thought she was cashing in on something valuable. What she didn't realize was that the ring wasn't just gold and diamonds. It was power, not the kind you can buy. The kind you earn when you carry a legacy that can't be sold for $500. I built something she could never touch again. Not because I wanted to prove anything to her, but because I had finally started living for me. It happened months later. An exclusive gala. One of those high-ceiling rooms where people talk softly, but the money speaks loudest. I wore a black suit, perfectly tailored, and the ring gleamed under the chandeliers like a quiet crown. I didn't expect to see her there. She wasn't supposed to belong in that world anymore. But she came, not as a guest, but as part of the catering staff, carrying trays, head slightly lowered, avoiding eye contact with the crowd that used to look up to her when she was by my side. Our eyes met briefly across the room, and in that instant, everything reversed. She was no longer the woman holding power over my heart. She was just a stranger in a room I owned. She looked away quickly, as if my gaze alone reminded her of everything she'd lost. Later that night, as I stepped outside for some air, she followed. She approached quietly, almost carefully, like someone stepping on glass. "I didn't know you'd be here," she said softly. "I did," I replied. Her brow furrowed, confused. "What do you mean? This world?" I gestured at the glittering hotel behind us. "I was always going to end up here, with or without you." Her throat tightened. She looked down at her hands, nervously wringing the corner of her apron. "I messed everything up." "Yes," I said simply. She looked up at me then, really looked. There was no fake smile this time. No excuses. Just a woman standing in front of the empire she'd never be part of. "I keep thinking about that day," she whispered. "About the pawn shop. About how stupid I was. I don't know why I did it." I exhaled slowly. "Yes, you do. You did it because you thought you could get away with it. You thought what I had would always be yours. But it never was. You didn't lose the ring that day. You lost me." She flinched like the words had weight. "And they did. You were the best thing that ever happened to me," she said shakily. "And I threw it away for something that doesn't even exist anymore." I tilted my head slightly, voice quiet. "No, you didn't throw away the best thing you had. You just never realized what it was worth." She started crying then, not loud, not messy, just tears sliding down silently. The kind that happen when regret is too deep to fix. "Do you hate me?" she asked suddenly, almost in a whisper. I paused. "No, I don't hate you. Hate would mean I still cared enough to give you that power. I don't." Her lips parted, as if she didn't know how to respond to indifference. Most people expect fury. Indifference is always worse. She wiped her tears clumsily with the back of her hand. "I just wish I could go back." I shook my head slowly. "You can't." The valet pulled up my car, and as I walked toward it, she called out behind me. "Wait." I turned. "Do you ever miss me?" I let the silence stretch for a few seconds, letting the cold night air settle between us. "I miss the idea of who I thought you were," I said. "But I don't miss you." Her face crumpled, but she didn't beg this time. She just stood there, watching me leave, her tears catching the faint golden light of the hotel. Driving away that night felt different. It wasn't like escaping something painful. It was like stepping out of a place I had outgrown. She had tried to reduce a $2 million legacy to $500. But what she really underestimated wasn't the ring. It was me. She thought I would break. But I rebuilt. She thought she could disappear with something precious. But I became something priceless. Months later, my company was on the front page of a major financial magazine. The heir who built an empire. My face, the ring gleaming on my hand, the story of betrayal turned into power. People asked me if I ever got over her. I smiled, because getting over implies she still had a place to climb down from. She didn't. I heard she moved away after that. A different city, a different life. People who burn bridges rarely stay to watch what grows on the other side. But I stayed. I built. I thrived. Because the real victory isn't revenge. It's silence. It's success. It's walking through rooms where their name doesn't matter anymore. She sold my ring for $500. But that was the price of her exit, and it was the best deal I ever made. People always talk about heartbreak like it's a wound, something that bleeds, scars, and fades. But what they don't talk about is how, if you let it, it can turn into fuel. A quiet, relentless fire that burns in the background of every decision you make. That's what she gave me, even if she never meant to. In the months that followed, my life became sharper. My mornings started earlier, my focus grew heavier, my goals clearer. I wasn't chasing distractions anymore. I was building something that no betrayal could touch again. There's a kind of power in pain when you stop running from it and start using it. It was around this time I was invited to an exclusive investment summit. Not the kind of place where people just talk numbers. This was where legacies were forged. I walked into that marble hall wearing the same ring she once pawned for $500. The same ring that now felt more like armor than jewelry. I didn't come as the man who'd been betrayed. I came as the man who had turned betrayal into an empire. As I stood among CEOs and heirs, billionaires and visionaries, someone leaned in and whispered, "That ring, it's beautiful." I smiled faintly. If only they knew. But what I didn't expect was her name to come up again. Not from her, from someone else. "She used to be with you, right?" my old friend Daniel asked, his tone cautious. "I saw her last month. She's working at a small diner near the outskirts. Looks tired." I didn't flinch. I didn't ask questions. I didn't need to. I knew life had already delivered the lesson she thought she'd never learn. Daniel hesitated. "You really don't care anymore, do you?" I took a slow sip of my drink and replied no, because caring would mean she still had a place in my future. She doesn't. And I meant every word. When people betray you, they think they're writing your ending. But sometimes they're just writing the prologue to your becoming. Weeks passed, and then something unexpected happened. She reached out again. A simple text. "Can we talk?" I stared at it for a long moment. Not out of emotion, out of calculation. Why now? Why after all this time? I didn't reply. But the universe has a way of tying loose ends whether you want to or not. I saw her again. It was late evening. A quiet cafe near the pier. I'd gone there to clear my head after a long day of negotiations. She was there, sitting alone, her hands wrapped around a chipped coffee mug like it was the only warmth she had left. She didn't notice me at first, but when she did, her eyes widened, not with arrogance this time, but with the kind of shock that comes from realizing time didn't wait for her. I walked past her table, intending to leave it at that, but she stood quickly. "Please," she said, her voice small. "Just 5 minutes." I should have walked away, but something in me, not love, not hate, just a desire for finality, made me nod. We sat down. She looked nothing like the woman I used to know. Her hair was tied back loosely. Her clothes were simple, worn. No designer labels. No expensive perfume. Just reality. "I'm not here to ask for anything," she began softly. "I know I don't have the right. I just needed to see you once more. To say, I'm sorry." I leaned back in my chair, silent. "I ruined everything," she whispered, her eyes glossy but steady. "I thought I was smart. I thought I could take what I wanted and still come back. I didn't realize how much I'd lose until it was already gone." She let out a small, shaky laugh. "When I sold that ring, I thought it was just a thing, just money. I didn't understand that I was selling the last real thing in my life." Her voice cracked. "You were my safe place, and I destroyed it." For the first time in a long time, I didn't see the woman who betrayed me. I saw someone who finally understood the weight of her actions. Not because I told her, because life had. I didn't gloat. I didn't smile. I didn't reach across the table. "Do you know what's funny?" I said quietly. "That ring was never about the money. It was about trust, legacy, and you traded it like it was pocket change." She nodded slowly. "I know, and I live with that every day." I took a breath, feeling something shift in me. Not forgiveness, not bitterness, just closure. "I don't hate you," I said softly. "Not anymore, because hate means you still matter. You don't, not in the way you once did. You're just part of my past, and my past doesn't control me anymore." She blinked fast, tears threatening to spill, but not quite falling. "I never stopped loving you," she whispered. I tilted my head slightly. "But you stopped respecting me." And that's worse. She closed her eyes, exhaling a shaky breath like the truth itself hurt more than anything else. We sat in silence for a long moment. Not the tense silence of old wounds, but the kind that settles when there's nothing left to say. Then I stood up. She looked up at me, desperate to hold on to something that no longer existed. Will I ever see you again? I paused, meeting her eyes one last time. I hope you do, but not because I'm standing next to you, because you're standing somewhere strong on your own. Her lips parted like she wanted to say something more, but I didn't wait. I walked away, the night air crisp against my skin, every step feeling lighter than the one before. Some stories don't need revenge. They need distance. And in that distance, something extraordinary happens. You stop being the broken one and start being the author of your own ending. She sold my ring for $500. I built an empire out of the ashes she left behind. And that night, at the cafe, that was the last chapter with her in it. The night air wrapped around me like something honest, something that didn't lie, didn't pretend, didn't promise to stay. Just air, just silence. And silence had become my truest friend. Walking away from that cafe, from her, from everything we used to be, didn't feel like a loss. It felt like a release. A door finally closing after hanging open too long, letting in drafts of pain I should have shut out long ago. She had sold my ring for $500. That was the price she put on everything we had. And in doing so, she taught me something she never intended to. How to choose myself over someone who underestimated me. When I got home that night, I opened the safe like I had so many times before. The ring sat there, unmoving, unbothered by time or betrayal. It wasn't just gold. It wasn't just diamonds. It was me. It was the weight of everything I'd carried, everything I'd rebuilt, everything I'd become. I slipped it onto my finger and looked at myself in the mirror. Not the man who'd been broken, the man who'd been reborn. That ring didn't belong to the version of me who waited for apologies. It belonged to the version who created empires from scars. Weeks passed. Life didn't slow down. It never does. Deals closed. Partnerships grew. People began to say my name in rooms I used to only dream about being in. And somewhere in that fast, electric momentum, I realized something almost startling. I wasn't just over her. I was untouchable. She hadn't just walked out of my life. She made room for me to finally step into it fully. No more shadowing someone else's loyalty. No more shrinking to make others comfortable. No more loving people who didn't know how to value me. The ring became something different then. No longer a reminder of betrayal, but a symbol of power. Not the loud kind that needs to be shouted, but the quiet, dangerous kind that people feel when you walk into a room. They saw a piece of jewelry. I saw every sleepless night turned into strength. They saw wealth. I saw proof that you can't destroy someone who refuses to stay broken. I heard she eventually left the city. Rumors floated through circles, whispers about where she'd gone, who she'd become, how she was starting over somewhere new. I didn't ask for details. I didn't need to. Her story wasn't mine anymore. One late afternoon, standing on the balcony of my penthouse overlooking the city, I watched the sun drop behind the skyline. The sky burned with streaks of gold and crimson, colors that looked almost exactly like the stones set in that ring. I lifted my hand slightly, the light catching it, throwing fractured light across the railing. And I smiled. Not the smile of a man seeking revenge. The smile of a man who found peace. Pain changes people, but survival shapes them. And when survival turns into success, there's no sound louder than silence. She sold my ring for $500, but I turned that betrayal into something worth more than she could ever comprehend. She'll remember me every time life reminds her what trust is worth. And I'll remember her not with hate, not with love, but with the quiet satisfaction of knowing she was never the ending of my story. She was just a plot twist that made it unforgettable.